Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, HollywoodShono here, about to give you another Injustice 2 video. In this video, we're going to be talking about characters that you should consider maining within Arena and why you should be doing that. Now, obviously, number one on my list is Predator Batman, and I am valuing him over Arkham Knight Batman for one reason. The reason for that is because of the Kryptonite Strikes, which actually also has armor piercing. So if you're going up against somebody that has 75% defense, and let's find somebody for example.
Batman.
This is not quite max defense, but this is probably good enough.
Green Lantern. Batman.
Okay. So we have a Predator Batman, or Arkham Knight Batman with 113,000 threat with 75% defense. So we're going to fight J2 Petty 166 with this team right here. Now this team also includes Horrific Scarecrow, who is on the list of characters that you can consider maining. And the reason for that is he makes the opponent's specials cost 2 more. And it is the hard counter for Dr. Fate. So this video specifically is going to be focusing on Emerald Green Lantern and Predator Batman because those are two cards that basically go very well on every team. Horrific Scarecrow, it really depends. You don't need him. But Emerald Green Lantern, Predator Batman, definitely top tier. Now, one thing about armor piercing, which I never really appreciated until somebody one-shot me in the campaign, is the fact that armor piercing ignores defense completely, which you guys know is Mythic 101. So Emerald Green Lantern goes down. Now, you saw that the Arkham Knight Batman had maxed out defense. Watch how fast armor piercing just rips that to shreds. Now watch a stun bomb. Kind of did okay. But armor piercing, I've seen crit for over 20,000 damage. And let me tell you, when it crits, it hurts. It hurts. So Dr. Fate gets eliminated. Alright, so next up, there are obviously some other honorable mentions, but we're going to do one more fight. Let's see if we can find somebody else that has 75% defense. Stubby Jack pretty close, so.
Deadshot.
Yeah, he's got pretty much 75% defense. So let's fight Stubby Jack, and you'll notice that once you're up at 200,000 threat, you're going to basically be running into the same 10, 15, 20 people. There are not that many people over 200,000 threat, so you're probably going to run into the same teams. When I use my main team, I can get upwards of 250,000 threat. This isn't quite it because of Horrific Scarecrow, but watch the armor piercing just rip up Sub-Zero, take out about 75% of his health. Now for the next one, we're going to land a stun bomb on Deadshot, who has about the same defense. There he is. And that actually does decent damage, so I have seen good shots with the armor piercing, and I've seen good shots with the stun bomb. Your mileage may vary. Obviously, if you're using Dr. Fate, the stun bomb is a no-brainer, but if moves cost 4, you probably want to go for the armor piercing to do a little more damage. There, we take an armor piercing, and obviously if you have people down that low, a stun bomb is good enough. You really don't need more than that. Obviously, the stun bomb is good when you need to knock down 2 people. The armor piercing is better against a single one. So, in my next demonstration, you guys can see that Emerald Green Lantern and Dr. Fate go well with everybody. Well, for our next demonstration, we're going to use Dr. Fate and Sub-Zero. You guys have seen this one before. This is the troll version of Sub-Zero. Let's not go up against somebody with Scarecrow. Let's go up against Goku 101-up. Now, one thing to note is that in the first minute of play, unless you get power generation from Green Lantern, you're not going to be cloning very much.
Begin.
It is still important to keep in mind cycle tagging is very important. Alright, so we got power generation there. Let's clone. Alright. So now that we have the clone, obviously armor piercing does work on Mythic Wonder Woman, and they did change it so she does not benefit from Dr. Fate, but does get debuffed by Scarecrow. here we can armor pierce down Harley Quinn, 8,000 damage, and the cool thing about the clone is that if the opponent super moves it, you get some serious value like that right there. And that is where Sub-Zero is a top tier character, more so than Unhinged Harley Quinn, that has to knock somebody out and can only do the move once. So we don't get power generation, which means we're at 3 bars, but this fight is pretty much over. Like, I don't know what the computer can do to actually win this fight. Let's freeze again. And if you guys doubt the value of a clone, you've been living under a rock, because it's one of the most powerful abilities in the game, especially combined with Emerald Green Lantern and Dr. Fate. Let's let a clone get knocked out. We didn't get power generation there, but sometimes you can get the power generation and go clone after clone after clone. I've made a previous YouTube video on this. It's a really fun, really powerful mechanic. Now, there is another variant of this, and it uses Atlantean Armor Aquaman instead of Sub-Zero. So we're going to show off that mechanic as well. Now, obviously, Aquaman is not as strong as Sub-Zero is, so this is probably not going to go as well against the 100,000 threat teams, but the whole concept is exactly the same. You can use Arkham Knight Batman and get more powerful hazards than Green Lantern, but you might want the power generation. Aquaman with Dr. Fate is the most important duo. You can swap out as necessary. You can go with Horrific Scarecrow to make the power cost more. Obviously, we're fighting a Horrific Scarecrow, so that was kind of dumb to showcase that off. But Atlantean Armor Aquaman not only has the armor piercing in his special 1, which hits quite a bit and really annoys the hell out of Mythic Wonder Woman, his special 2 is one of the most powerful and busted abilities in the game, because if the opponent tags out, they're going to get power drain. And you can just continuously spam, especially if the move costs 3, because they're going to sit in the electricity for a good 2 to 2.5 bars of power, and they literally can't do anything. So then Atlantean Armor Aquaman can basically get up to 5 bars and repeat. 3 bars if you don't have Scarecrow, 7 if you don't even have a Dr. Fate. And even still, a 7-bar power drain is really strong. You can see Arkham Knight Batman taking heavy damage and cannot even do a special, and we're already at 3 bars. The opponent is at 2. So Green Lantern tags out. He can't even get off a special. Green Lantern's going to get eliminated. Horrific Scarecrow's in, and he gets power drain to the point where he cannot use a special either. So obviously, if you have that ability upgraded, you're going to drain more than 1 bar of power. And the special 1 also acts as armor piercing, if you guys didn't know that, which is even more busted than you guys would believe imaginable. So to give you an idea of how strong the armor piercing is, it's just like Horrific Scarecrow. It's balanced. It's not like Flora Poison Ivy and Mythic Wonder Woman, who I feel that their move is just too strong. And Arkham Knight Batman gets eliminated. You can see that Aquaman beat 100,000 threat by himself, basically countering Dr. Fate with Horrific Scarecrow. So, in my opinion, that's a top 5 character, which I made a video on my top 10 cards. And now we're going to talk about one of the cheesers in the game, Mythic Wonder Woman. So we're going to change our entire roster to go around Mythic Wonder Woman. So, obviously, when the sweeps cost 1, it's really stupid. So we're going to go up against Brocco. So you can see how much we're going to be spamming the sweep here. Obviously, Emerald Green Lantern, you can use him with anybody. Dr. Fate, you can use him with anybody. Specific characters do need specific cards, like, for example, Green Lantern and Dr. Fate, to maximize usefulness. You don't need that with Mythic Wonder Woman. She is a good card by herself. But watch how cheap these sweeps are. So you can basically just do nothing. Sweep the whole match and win the game. Emerald Green Lantern comes in. And now we have even more damage. So imagine a sweep costing 1, which you really don't have much defense against except for a super block, and we can just shield toss Predator Batman, no chance in hell. And that's the devastation of Mythic Wonder Woman. If you want to win fights quickly, just shield toss and swipe, and you can do that no problem. So we've covered all of the top tier characters except 1, being Flora Poison Ivy. Flora Poison Ivy is another top tier character because, like Mythic Wonder Woman, the Special 2 has armor piercing, and it also has a dot on top of that. However, patch 1.6 fixed it, so it no longer carries over to another person. So we're going to use Blade Master Robin along with Flora Poison Ivy because Emerald Green Lantern is exhausted. So let's go up against somebody that does not have a Dr. Fate on the team, which a lot of higher threat people do, which is really annoying. Take your Dr. Fates and Scarecrows off your team. Let's go up against Jago Vertex. So basically, Flora Poison Ivy Special 2 is the one you probably want to use unless you need that extra damage from the Special 3. Do not touch Flora Poison Ivy Special 1. Unlike Predator Batman, where the specials are flexible, there is almost no situation that you actually need to use it. Unless, of course, you need to go for a super quick knockout and you don't have the power. But generally, you don't need it. So Flora Poison Ivy doesn't have a lot of defense, and that did some decent damage. So Blade Master Robin is not in my top tier list, but he is a good combo generator and should not be taken lightly because obviously we have 3 class advantages. Now, Flora Poison Ivy here is probably going to get eliminated before getting to 4 bars, but I basically proved my point that armor piercing is a really strong mechanic, and even blocked, you still take half of the armor piercing damage. The biggest protection against anything armor piercing is super block. However, Flora Poison Ivy's is even harder to time than Mythic Wonder Woman. So I have 6 honorable mentions, one of which we've actually played with. And I'm going to run through the 6 honorable mentions you could also main as well. So, number 1 on my list, Speed Force the Flash. Fastest man alive, has up to a 70% chance to stun, has really fast attacks. The only weakness that Speed Force the Flash has is you don't want to tap when he tags in because he kicks and leaves you really vulnerable. Another honorable mention, in my opinion, is Powered Supergirl, and the reason for that is her walking laser cannot be mitigated by blocking or by super block. It's basically guaranteed full damage, and critical hits will adjust the power cost by 100%. So if you have 30%, or if you have 75% crit chance, you basically have a 22.5% chance to trigger a free walking laser. And that means it's going to pretty much go off all the time by the time you get off a decent combo. Unfortunately, she does not have a super block. However, next on my list is going to surprise a lot of people. And it's not as bad as people think, and that would be Rubber! While the card is super slow and super dumb, there are 2 things that Gorilla Grodd has in favor of him. Number 1, just like Speed Force the Flash, he also has a stun on Special 1. Granted, his costs 4, and Speed Force the Flash's costs 3, so it's not as reliable. However, when Gorilla Grodd forces a tag out and stops it, you're going to be doing double the attack and damage. Now, I don't know if that's modified by 5 stars. I don't think it is. I think just the percent chance is. So if you want to directly increase the damage this does, and this is not mitigated by defense. So if you have 5,000 attack, you're going to do 10,000 damage and tagging damage. Is it worth it? Probably not. But keep in mind, he does have the super block, and he does have a stun on Special 1. So pretty flexible card. It is definitely one that sucks at 3 stars, but once you start getting them up to 4 and 5, it's not that bad. Also, on the honorable mention list is Unbreakable Cyborg, and the reason for that is kind of the same way as Harambe and for Unhinged Harley Quinn. It is the simple fact that the Special 2 has a stun chance, much like Speed Force the Flash and Telekinetic Gorilla Grodd. Stuns are really powerful in this game, so anything that you can use to counter that really good. And Unhinged Harley Quinn also has that same stun chance on Special 2. Has a decent Special 3, even though it's not like Silver Harley Quinn's that can hit 2 opponents. And the fact that she can also steal an opponent, and they can use a super move, so you don't have to on Harley Quinn. So it's like getting a 4th super move. So if you tech Unhinged Harley Quinn right, she can be really good. And finally, Probably one of the most useful in the honorable mentions, Horrific Scarecrow, not because of the opposing team's attack, but the fact that he adjusts the team's power cost by 2. So you can obviously get some benefit with Arkham Knight Batman. Like you could use Arkham Knight Batman with Horrific Scarecrow, and now the Fear Gas will do more damage. The Chain Spin also has armor piercing, but it's not as devastating as Mythic Wonder Woman and Flora Poison Ivy, the 2 worst offenders to armor piercing. And also, Warrior Queen Wonder Woman also has armor piercing in her special one as well, which again, much like Horrific Scarecrow and Atlantean Armor Aquaman, it's not going to cost you the game if you miss a block. And it's not going to be like Predator Batman, where if you miss a block, it's going to utterly destroy you. But armor piercing is a really strong mechanic, and it's one that you don't want to overlook, especially if you have a 5-star with a maxed out skill. You can definitely make all of these work. So, are there any other honorable mentions? I will give a couple that I might recommend. Suicide Squad Harley Quinn is not the greatest card on paper. Mikey's Box might argue that. However, the cool thing about Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, kind of like BVS Superman, is that you can tack Suicide Squad Harley Quinn to get more attack using a Joker, or crit chance from Deadshot, or power regen from Harley Quinn. So the power regen from Harley Quinn is pretty cool because there's some synergy with Unhinged Harley Quinn that you could use for that. Obviously, more attack from the Joker is obviously good. Joker is an offensive card, and Silver Joker is a definite sleeper because he can knock people out. Also, Bane has team damage for basic tag, jump, rush, range, and crouch attacks, and team critical attacks. One of the best non-gold passives in the game, much like Emerald Green Lantern. Super strong utility, and it does synergize well with Silver Harley Quinn. It even works with Green Arrow, which I wish Ace Green Arrow was in the game.
Superman.
And BVS Superman, as you can see, gains attack from any Batman and health from any Wonder Woman. And it's based on your attack. So you'd get 10% of Batman's attack, or you could get up to 20% if you have it up to 5 stars. So the effects are pretty cool. But you could definitely get a strong BVS Superman. And the fact that he has a super block, well, BVS Superman is probably an underrated card you could definitely make use of. So Deadshot also gets honorable mention because he does give team crit chance. Obviously, it's not as extreme as Bane's, but you can definitely make it work. Scarecrow is also super annoying, just like Telekinetic Gorilla Grodd, but I find him to be pretty weak. And unlike Horrific Scarecrow, he does not have armor piercing, so that's a big one too. Last left, the Joker is a damage machine, especially if you're running Sub-Zero and Dr. Fate, because every clone that spawns will also give you a damage boost. So if you spawn 5 clones, it's up to 75% more damage, and you don't even have to have somebody knocked out. So if you're running Dr. Fate with Last Laugh the Joker and Sub-Zero, good luck, because that's a really fun team to deal with. Arkham Knight Batman, I obviously did not play within the arena because I don't want to level him up until I actually get enough XP capsules for level 60. But the passive team hazard damage is going to have synergy with other cards in the future because any ground effect counts as a hazard, including his own stun bot. So Arkham Knight Batman does tech better with cards like Atlantean Armor Aquaman than Predator Batman. So if you're using a lot of hazards, don't use Predator Batman. Even though the armor piercing is amazing, if you're using Atlantean Armor Aquaman, hazards generally are dots except for stun bombs. So use that to your advantage. Cyborg, in my opinion, is a fun card in longer fights. Maxed out with defense, he's going to be really hard to knock out. He's the only card in the game that actually boosts health. So a 10% increase when you have level 60 gear is going to be about 4,000 health. Not too shabby. Catwoman also gets an honorable mention as well because damage over time is a big deal and cannot be mitigated by defense. So if you've ever had a Last Laugh the Joker basically just destroy your max defense character, that is why. Just like armor piercing, you can't avoid it. And Green Arrow is one of the only cards in the game that has a direct power drain. Obviously, to make best use of that, you probably want to have Dr. Fate and a Black Canary on your team. That way you increase the crit chance. You could also use Bane if power generation is not a big deal. Harley Quinn also has 2 specials that does multi-moves, and her passive is 10% team attack. And it's on a silver card you can farm in chapters 1 and 5. Very easy to get if you want to do it. Soul Stealer Dr. Fate is also an honorable mention because upon activating Super Move, Dr. Fate will swap health with the opponent. So much like Energized Starfire, if you tier for defense and make that your priority over everything else, your Soul Stealer Dr. Fate will pretty much guarantee a health swap. So you can basically just purposely get your Dr. Fate low, knock him out, and use him on the toughest person. Really good value there. And the Joker's passive, the opponent gains 3 power and the opponent is stunned for 9 seconds unless they resist, which more often than not they won't. However, Silver Aquaman does protect against that. Keep that in mind. Armored Superman gives the most team defense out of anybody, even though Silver Aquaman does give more if you're running 2 metahumans. So for example, if you're running Flora Poison Ivy and Horrific Scarecrow, Aquaman will actually give more defense than Armored Superman, but to keep the classes fair, Armored Superman is a might class, whereas Metahuman does synergize with might. So Silver Wonder Woman also gets mentioned because she does give up to 10% melee attack, so definitely not a bad one there. And Captain Cold is a heavy offensive card, much like Mythic Wonder Woman. The ability to stop one of these special 1s or 2s could be game-changing if it lands on a Mythic Wonder Woman, which is probably about 50% of arena teams. And Team Critical Attack Resistance is a huge defensive passive because if you can't crit, a lot of people are not going to do nearly as much damage. Like that armor-piercing special 1 from Predator Batman is probably not going to one-shot you if it doesn't crit. So Captain Cold is definitely a card you can main. And is he better than Sub-Zero? No. If you're running Dr. Fate, Captain Cold is worse than Sub-Zero. However, if you're not running a 4-star Dr. Fate, Captain Cold can be viable and even still very useful. So, is Enraged Bane useful for endgame? No. Is Primal Swamp Thing useful for endgame? No. Is Robin useful endgame? No. Don't focus on these cards. And Deadshot is an offensive card, but again, you don't need to main him. Obviously, don't take my advice because you can main whoever you want. You can customize even Primal Swamp Thing to be a beast. Don't expect him to win fights in 5 seconds like a Predator Batman can, but anybody you use, you can main. So, if you like this video on characters that you should be maining to maximize your threat and score in Arena, please give this video a like rating, comment, subscribe, share this video amongst your friends, and as a favorite, check out my other Injustice 2 videos playlist, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, which are all HollywoodShono. And leave your comments down below who you guys want me to focus on next after I get Arkham Knight Batman and Predator Batman decently geared up. Have a wonderful day, kids.
www.youtube.com/HollywoodShono. Subscribe, bitches!